Hey everybody. I hope everyone's doing well. Uh, I want to first start off before we get into any work. I just again want to hope that everyone is okay during this time. This is a really strange uh, situation that we're in. We've never had to do something like this before. I've never had to teach like this before. Um, and I'm sure most of you have never had to learn like this before. So this is going to be new, but we are all super capable and we're going to be great. So I just wanted to say again that I hope everyone's okay. Make sure you keep washing your hands and practice social distancing. I know it's difficult, but if we really want to stop the spread of this, we need to make sure that we are not in close contact with people in general. So do your best with that. I also just want to say I'm okay. I know I was out last week, but everything's good. So uh, we are here, and this is how we're going to be doing things for quite a while. So we're going to get into the work in a second. But again, before I do that, there are a few things that I need you guys to understand and really pay attention to. So, as I'm sure you've been made aware, we are going to primarily be using Google Classroom and Scheduler for pretty much everything now. So, all of the lectures that we do, these videos, the guided notes that you guys usually get in class, assignments, worksheets, articles, all of that is going to be posted on Google Classroom. All of it. So I know that we always stress to you from the beginning of the year that you need to really be checking Google Classroom. Now, so more than ever, that really needs to be true. So please make sure your notifications are on. Make sure you are checking a couple of times a day. We will be posting things every single day of the week, Monday through Friday, just like we're in school. So you're going to be getting a video with a lecture, and you're also going to be getting some sort of task or assignment every day. So whether that's going to be a worksheet or an article that you have to read or questions you have to answer, short answer, multiple choice, whatever it is, you're going to be getting something every day, and it will be due that day. So it's going to be due like the next morning, right? So if I post something today, which I am, of course, because you're watching this, whatever we're posting today will be due at the due date. So just make sure you are aware of when those due dates are. They will be posted on the assignments themselves. Um, so everything you're going to need is on Google Classroom and Scheduler or Pupil Path. That's where your grades will be posted. You can always post a question directly under the assignment. You could post a question under the video if you have a specific question. You could also email myself. You could email Miss Steele at any time, and we will get back to you. Um, you know, just make sure you are staying on top of your stuff, and we're going to get through this. All right. So, again, any questions, just let us know. We're going to get started with our first lecture or lesson of this unit, and it's called Cladograms. So I'm not sure if any of you have ever heard Cladograms. Oh, well, you know what? Before I start, one more quick thing. I'm going to go through the PowerPoint slides, and I'm going to make sure I explain everything on them. I'm going to go through them as slow as I can, but not too slow because, again, remember, this is a video. You can always pause. You can always go back and hear what I said. I'm also going to try and answer questions that you might have. I know you're physically not answering them, but you know, I can anticipate some of the things you may be confused with, so I'm going to try and do that. But again, if you have any questions, just let me know. All right. So I'm going to take some water. All right. So cladograms. So we're going to learn about cladograms, and really our main focus is we're going to learn about what cladograms are, how to analyze them, and then what their importance is in science and evolution. You will almost always get some sort of cladogram question on the regions. They usually ask about it. Sometimes it's multiple choice. Sometimes it's part of the writing. But you'll always see one or two questions. And it's really not that confusing. So it's an easy way to get some points. and we are going to learn how to do that right now. So what is a cladogram, right? So a cladogram is a diagram that is used to show the relationship between organisms. So scientists, taxonomists, right? People that study animals, people that study the relationships of animals, all of them use cladograms to be able to determine how closely related an organism is to another organism, or how not related an organism is to another organism. And they do that through looking at characteristics and also through common ancestors. Right? So this kind of touches on evolution a bit, and it touches on reproduction a little bit, which is actually the unit we're going to start. This is what we're starting right now, so this is a good way to get into that. So let's take a look at a cladogram. So this is an example of a cladogram. Now you may see them in any different way. Sometimes there won't be pictures, sometimes just the name of the organism will be there. Sometimes you will have pictures. It usually will never be in color on a test, but that shouldn't make a difference. So before we even get into this, let's just look at it and see what we see. So we notice that all the organisms are placed at the top of the cladogram. We also notice that there's a line that goes this way, right? We notice that there are branches that come off of the branch of the line. And then we also notice that on this line at the bottom, there are different types of characteristics. So we have jaws, we have lungs, claws or nails, fur, mammary glands, and we also have feathers, right? So there are different types of characteristics that are placed at the bottom. And the way that we look at cladograms is, one important thing to remember is that as we move from the bottom to the top, we are moving throughout time. So basically this is the most ancient, while this up here is the most recent. So the oldest organism we have here would be our hagfish. So this is an ancient organism. So it's located way at the bottom of the cladogram here because it's really old. And as we move throughout time, there are new organisms that appear. And as we get to the top, we are moving closer to present day, right? Where we still have chimps, mice, pigeons. So these are closer and modern day organisms. These are further away. Now, we also want to understand how to read relationships, right? Because the whole point of a cladogram is to figure out which organism is most related to another organism. And the way that we do that is by looking at the characteristics at the bottom and also the positioning of the organisms. So for instance, we see that right here we have jaws, right? So jaws are placed right after the hagfish, but right before every other organism. All right, I'm going to say that one more time. Jaws are placed on the line after hagfish, right? They're after the hagfish, but they're before the perch. They come before the salamander, before the lizard, before the pigeon, mouse, and chimp. And what that means is that whenever you have a characteristic on this line, any organism that comes after the characteristic, it means that that organism has that characteristic. So what this means is the hagfish doesn't have jaws because it came before. But it does mean that the perch, the salamander, the lizard, the pigeon, the mouse, and the chimp all have jaws. You would do that with each characteristic that we have here, right? So if you want to talk about what has claws or nails, well, you got to look what comes after claws or nails. Lizard, pigeon, mouse, and chimp. All of those organisms have claws or nails, while the salamander, the perch, and the hagfish don't. Okay, so that's the first way to analyze a cladogram. You really need to look at the characteristics, and you need to determine which organisms share those characteristics. The rule of thumb is that organisms that share the most characteristics are most closely related. So if we're looking at this cladogram, which two organisms do you think are the most related? Now, I can't call on you. I can't, ask for opinions. But, take a second, pause the video if you need to, and try and figure out which two do you think are most related and why do you think they are most related. Okay, well, the chimp and the mouse are most related, right? Because they share every single characteristic on this lineage right here, except for feathers, right? Because that's an outlier. Feathers are only shared by the bird. But they share fur. They also have mammary glands because they come after that, right? Both of them come after. They both come after claws or nails. They both come after lungs. They both come after jaws, all right? Those are the only two organisms that share all of them, so they are most closely related. That's one question that you can be asked on the Regents. Which two organisms are most closely related? That's how you'd figure it out. They can also ask you a question, which two are least related? And then you could figure that out by just going backwards and saying, well, which two of these organisms share the least amount of characteristics? And that would, of course, be the hagfish and the chimp. Right? So that's the main way that we analyze a cladogram. We're going to look at this again, but before I do that, I want to define a couple of key things that we need to know. Right? So what do you need to know about a cladogram? Well, this is what we need to know. So there are 6 things that you should be analyzing whenever you look at a cladogram, and I have them written out here. The first thing is called a node, right? So nodes are any point on the cladogram where 2 lines will meet. Internodes are the space between 2 nodes. Terminal branches are the branches at the end of a cladogram. A common ancestor. So this is the point on a cladogram where 2 species branch off. Outgroup and ingroup, very important. Outgroup means the organism in a cladogram that is least like the rest. And then the ingroup is the organism in a cladogram that is most like the rest, shares most or all of the characteristics as opposed to little or none of them. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at this cladogram again, and we're going to go through each of these 6, and we're going to analyze them and say what they are. Because when you go through different cladograms, you're going to have to answer these questions, and you're going to need to know what they look like. So let's talk about nodes. So nodes, as we said, are any point on the cladogram where 2 lines meet. So when we're looking at a cladogram, you want to look for where 2 lines will meet with one another, and that's where your node is. So we have hagfish here. If we trace this line all the way down, right there is a node, because this line meets with this line. So there's a node. We're going to do the same thing with the perch. There's a node. There's a node. There's a node. There's a node. And there's a node. It's any point in which there is a meeting point of 2 lines. Now, this is a fairly simple cladogram. You're going to get work on ones that are a little more complex. Sometimes there are going to be lines that branch off of other lines. Those would be nodes as well. So just remember, a node is any point where there is a meeting point between 2 lines. Okay. Internodes is the space between 2 nodes. So simply what that means is there's a space between 2 nodes. So if you have a node here, right, and you have a node here, this space right here is the internode. You have a node here, and you have a node here. This space right here is the internode. So the internode is just the space in between 2 nodes. Terminal branches are the branches at the end of a cladogram. Now again, because this one is a fairly simple cladogram, all of these here, right, these are all terminal branches because they are the final branches. There is nothing else coming off of this cladogram. If you had one where there were terminal branches, like there was something coming off here or there was something coming off over here, then those would be your terminals. But because there isn't, each one of these is a terminal branch. A common ancestor. This is one of the most important, if not the most important part to know about this entire thing. You really need to understand where the common ancestor is. I have seen those questions often. So common ancestor, this is the point on a cladogram where two species branched off from. So it is where two different species came about. It's the common ancestor. I'm sure we've all heard that term before. So let's look and see where the common ancestor is for some of these organisms, right? So a question that they can ask you is, where is the common ancestor between the pigeon and the chimp, right? That's a question you can get on the Regents. They'll show you this, and they'll say, mark the common ancestor between the pigeon and the chimp. And you would have to mark it, right? Now, you don't always have to name it. They may not give you a name. They may not give you an actual organism, but you would have to find it on the cladogram. Sometimes they might give you a name, but here they're not. So if I were to ask you that question, where's the common ancestor between the pigeon and the chimp, what would you say? Where would you mark it, right? I would take a second and pause this video again and see if you can figure that point out. If you put it here, then you're correct, right? Because this is the node in which you have the pigeon meeting with the chimp, right? Right there. That's the common ancestor. There was some organism at this point in time, because remember, time moves from here as the past all the way up to the present. So at this point, whatever year this was, whatever time this was, an organism was there that gave rise to pigeons and also would eventually give rise to chimps. The same thing could be said for any of these organisms, just the point would change. If they asked where's the common ancestor between the salamander and the chimp, you would say right there, right? So a common ancestor is just a location on the cladogram that gave rise to both organisms. Okay. Let's see. Outgroup and ingroup. So outgroup is the organism in a cladogram that is least like the rest, while ingroup is the organism that is most like the rest. So what that means is the outgroup shares little or no characteristics. The ingroup shares most or all of them. So if we're looking at this one, which is the outgroup and which is the ingroup? Take a second, pause the video, try and answer that. The outgroup is the hagfish, right? Because it shares nothing with these organisms. It comes before any characteristic that we have written. It doesn't have jaws, it doesn't have lungs, it doesn't have nails or claws, certainly doesn't have feathers, and it doesn't have fur or mammary glands. So this is the outgroup because it doesn't share any. While the chimp would be the ingroup because it does share all of them, except the feathers. But it does share most, if not all of them. All right, so that's the outgroup and ingroup. Also another question that you could be asked. All right, the last thing that we're going to talk about is very simply relatedness between organisms. Another question that's common is they can say, how do I word this? They could say something like, are the salamander and lizard more closely related than the salamander and the mouse? And you may have to back up your answer. So again, is the salamander and lizard more closely related, or is the salamander and the mouse more closely related? And then back up your answer. So take a second, think about it, and then come back. You should be saying that the salamander and the lizard are more related because they are, one, more closely on the cladogram, right? They are closer together on the cladogram, which means they developed in time closer to one another. But you should also be saying that they are more closely related because they share more of the characteristics with one another, right? They share more characteristics with one another than the salamander and the mouse do. So they are more closely related for that reason, as well as because they are closer in time. So that is also a common question that can be asked of any organism on any cladogram. Okay, and that's pretty much how we analyze it. So remember, you have to remember these things. You have to remember how to find these things on a cladogram. And I would recommend that the most important thing you understand, well, you should understand all of it, but you really need to understand common ancestor. You need to understand who the common ancestor is, where it's found, and then you also need to understand which organisms are more closely related to one another than other organisms. All right, so those are the key takeaways for cladograms. And that's pretty much it for this. So this is the first video that you're going to be getting. What we're going to do is you're going to have this video. You can watch it as many times as you want, of course. You could rewind. You could pause it, take notes on it. I recommend that you do. And then there's an assignment that is going to be attached to this video. The assignment is going to be more cladogram work. So you're going to get a worksheet that has a different cladogram on it that is a little more complex than this one. And you're going to have to answer questions about it and analyze it based on what we just learned, right? So again, if you have any questions about the video, if you have any questions about the assignment, please feel free to post on Google Classroom underneath the video or the assignment. You can also email myself or Ms. Steele at any time. And please, again, make sure you are checking the due dates for these assignments because they are going to be coming up right after the video and the assignment is posted. You're not going to have days in between, so make sure you check that. And also make sure you are checking Classroom and Scheduler in general for any assignments. All right, guys, I hope you have a great day. Again, this is going to be the way we do things from now on, and we're going to have to get used to that. But I think it went well. So if you have any questions or concerns, if you'd like me to do something different in the next video, let me know. Otherwise, wash your hands, stay safe, and I will see you tomorrow.